World War III update, and I got to be honest, I'm in quite the somber mood. I am at a loss for words right now. I knew this was coming. I've been warning people about it for years, that we are going to see apocalyptic wildfires consume and infringe upon urban areas, and that it's going to seem like something out of a movie. I never thought it would be in the place that they made movies, even though that was one of the places that I guess statistically was most likely. We are talking about 40,000 acres. So far, that number is going to grow, unfortunately, the way the winds are changing. 40,000 acres of residential area. 40,000. Now, that doesn't seem like much if you follow wildfires like I do. I've made dozens of videos on how to evacuate from a city and reporting on the fires here in Canada, where we measure our fires in the millions of hectares, okay? But 40,000 acres, that's about 250 quarter sections of land chock full of some of the most prime real estate in the world, gone up in flames, and increasingly infringing upon some of the poorer areas where there's a much higher population density. There is nothing quite as emblematic of the end of America than these scenes. And if it was just this event, then we could say that it was a one-off thing. But it isn't. How many of these major meteorological events, these anomalies, these unprecedented in scale and scope events, are we going to have to witness before we start to say, I wonder if there's a trend here? Whether you believe this was arson, government corruption, forestry mismanagement, or global warming, it really doesn't matter, because it's ending. Okay, the American dream is ending, and nothing quite epitomizes that like this 10-second clip right here. This 10-second clip tells you everything you need to know. We are living in an epochal moment. This is something that I don't think has truly sunk in for people, the scale of this thing, and it could spread in the coming days ahead. While you might not agree with the politics of LA, you might not like the people of LA. There is something about the American dream incarnate in Sunset Boulevard, in the coastlines of LA, in just the California experience as a whole. There's something about it, right? And to see it burning down in such a cataclysmic way, it really just, you're at a loss for words, especially when you're a Cassandra like me and you've been trying to warn people about these things. But people are so credulous that they just don't want to believe it. And I just don't know what to say. This one hits me in a different way because it just, every week there's something new. Every week I'm vindicated with what I say on this channel, and it's starting to get to the point where I'm scaring myself with my predictions. So some people are going to say, oh, you're being too dramatic. Well, let's wait till next week, until the next major crisis unfolds. Of course, there's opportunistic people looting, trying to get what they can. And you might think that these people are getting ahead, but they're just a symptom. How pathetic is it to be looting a place that recently had people evacuate because they thought they were going to lose everything? How low of a society, how far have you fallen from grace that that is the situation that unfolds? If people can't see the deterioration and the decay, the societal decay, then, if George Floyd riots weren't enough, then, this is icing on the cake, really. What do? This is an epochal moment. You have one of the most iconic cities in America burning down, and it could potentially get a lot worse. Here's the numbers. They total about 40,000 when all is said and done. I'm rounding up because by the time this video is done, the fires will have spread. We had the Kenneth fire jump from about, I was watching that one when it was just one building on fire, and it instantly spread to 1,000 acres burned. Zooming in here, let's just look at the map to see what exactly it looks like. It's kind of, this map doesn't do it justice. But this is this is LA. This is a big ass city, okay? And we're getting to the point where no matter which way the wind blows, it looks like that Hollywood sign could potentially be in the crosshairs. And I think when that moment occurs, something in the American spirit is going to die. Yes, we know that Hollywood is run by satanic, twisted, devil-worshipping, blood-drinking, you know, whatevers. But it is still, there's something about it that's quintessential to America, and to see it burn down is just crazy. The police are trying to get the looting under control right now, as you can see. I mean, typical LA traffic, I guess, but lots of police cars, lots of emergencies, and what typically is going to happen in a situation like this is they're not going to have the emergency services to respond to calls to other, you know, baseline events that might be occurring. You know, everyday crime is probably going to increase. So this is something that, in addition to having an evacuation plan, because despite how fast this fire has spread, and despite what the forecast might be, there's going to be a lot of people that succumb to the normalcy bias and just believe that it's never going to happen to me. This thing could turn on a dime. And you might want to evacuate, not even for the fire itself, but just for the crazy that the fire starts to drive out, okay? Because these cops are not going to be able to respond to these calls. Now, I want to share with you a report from a woman in the region, your typical liberal, don't get offended, liberal white woman, okay, in California, and she plays that part right to a T. Let's hear what she has to say. And again, I don't say that in a disparaging way, but you're all going to understand what I mean in just a moment, okay?
As I was getting my whole family out, all you have in your mind is just you're in survival mode at that point. I saw men coming into our neighborhoods. Police confirmed it. She had this to say. Take a listen. It was wild.
I mean, at least she's in good spirits.
We just started seeing all these cars pull up.
I feel sorry for the lady. Don't get me wrong. I know there's going to be some of you who think I'm being insensitive, but just listen to what she says, and we got to take this as a lesson.
Doors open, and groups of men running up our street, going up to the doors of these houses, and we weren't sure what was going on. I'm thinking, are these people here to help my neighbors? I hope so.
Are these big, strong men here to help my neighbors? I hope so. Hey.
And I left, and then my husband talked to the police and said, what are those guys doing? These guys don't live here. Get them out. My next door neighbor said, his quote, there were like 100 people that came up on scooters and were trying to get into any and all houses on the street.
It's almost like they live in a reality where they're just so far removed from threats or something, or they're just so uncritically minded that they don't consider these possibilities, which is probably why a lot of them are anti-gun. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade on this particular person. I feel sorry for her losses, but guys, you got to be more vigilant than this. Okay, I mean, 100 men? Who are these nice men coming to help us on scooters? If it's that bad, when it's not that bad, imagine how bad it's going to be when it really gets bad. All right? Don't be naive.
Did you physically see police officers stopping them? I didn't, but it's not to say that they weren't. It was so incredibly chaotic, and I was so worried about...
I'm sure I did a skit once where I was I was contrasting the all-American, hardcore, right-wing prepper type with the, you know, laissez-faire liberal type. And one of the characters I played, allowed people to break into his home and left his door open because he didn't want them to get injured on the glass if they broke the window. And unfortunately, this nice lady tends to remind me of that character. So just don't succumb to this stuff. Be very vigilant right now because the police are not going to be able to respond, okay? So, yeah, this is crazy. They're having telecommunications issues in Las Vegas. The main pipeline for Las Vegas gasoline supply has been shut down. This is out of precaution due to the wildfires in LA where the pipeline begins. This does not mean go up and stockpile on gasoline. That would just make things worse. Hint, hint. You probably should have stocked up on gasoline a long time ago, but because you didn't, now it's going to be a major panic. We do have other news to talk about as well. Trump dropped a bombshell today, as well as some stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine, of course. But we just got to get through this fire stuff. Fallout Season 2 filming halted due to apocalyptic LA fires. That should have been what was written there. And, she seems to be in contemplation of the end of the world for real, for real. Perhaps this will give the actors some, fresh perspective that will perhaps inform and enhance their act. It's crazy, man. Fallout, if you don't know, it's a apocalyptic TV show, okay, which is filmed in LA, and now it's been postponed. So that's the irony that's being expressed here. This is another shot. I thought the scenes in 2020 would be among the most iconic that we ever seen next to LA burning down, but then LA burned down, or is in the process of burning down. Now, LA is massive. At the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a mere decimation. And I don't say that lightly. When I say mere decimation, I mean 10% of the city potentially burned, which is insane. The property values in these regions are so high that the estimates of rebuilding are probably somewhat exaggerated. But you can see here just the understanding of scope and scale. This is just one tiny little neighborhood of many. This is another great image that puts in perspective how much was burned. The Great Chicago Fire, one of the biggest fires in American history. 2,000 acres, okay? This is just the Palisade Fire. This doesn't include the other 23,000 odd acres of urban land that has been burned. So this thing is absolutely massive. Hunter Biden's house burned down, as well as numerous other celebrities. No, I didn't just call Hunter Biden a celebrity. Emergency alert was issued for all of LA by accident. So this was sent out to everybody in the LA region. So you could imagine the panic that ensued when that happened. Mind you, knowing how credulous people are, they probably just brushed it off. But this could be a warm-up for what's coming. Because I looked into the weather. I don't have Climate Reanalyzer up here right now. But the weather is suggesting that there are going to be some pretty intense winds coming from the ocean side come Saturday, Sunday. So that could potentially move the fire in the other direction. I know there's a lot of valleys throughout the region that channel and kind of intensify the convective patterns of the wind, but so who knows? Anything can possibly happen at this point, but this is out of this world, out of this world. Even for me, knowing that all this was going to happen. This is Malibu, so you could see very densely populated on the right, and then, of course, that's the ocean, and what remains is not a whole lot. Incredible. People are asking, why are there still trees standing? Is it a conspiracy? Trees have something called moisture, okay? When you build your home with lumber, usually the lumber is dry. That's why it burns. The trees are still very charred, but they don't burn entirely because these fires are so fast. And because they're so intense and so hot, they really just burn anything that's dry and very combustible very quickly. And so it's not enough. Like if you've ever tried to light a fire in the woods with wet wood or green wood, you'll know what I mean. It takes forever to light this stuff, okay? Like you can't even light it. You can't even get it going. Even if you do get it going for a while, if it's not a constant fire source on it, it's not going to continuously burn. So that's why there's a handful of trees still burning, guys. It's not a conspiracy, all right? Okay, so this is LA's situation. It was wetter than normal from 1991 to 2020, okay? That was, this is the average, yeah. And back in, I believe, January to April of 2024, they got all that rain. Remember, prior to that, the rivers were drying up. It was like 1 in 1,000-year drought. You remember that? And then they just got this, what do they call it? Atmospheric river after atmospheric river, and it completely inundated the place. And since that time, it's been dry. Typically what happens is that water will allow things to grow. And that creates more potential fuel, because if you enter a dry season then and those things start to dry out, that's when it can become a potential fire hazard. And because there's this thing knows I'm looking at rooftop tents, even though I already own one, this is just an aerial view of some of the damage. Absolutely devastating. This is out of this world, man. You can't even make a movie out of what's happened in the last month, much less this event itself. Okay, are we off this? Well, I just want to quickly show you. These are some of the property values of the places that have burned down, all of the Palisades. So we got $4 million. We got a $19 million house. We got a $25 million house. A $60 million house. What? $50 million house? Geez, it's like this is New York or something, or Florida. Okay, so a lot of these places, important to understand, a lot of this property value is in the location. The actual house, what goes into building the house, I'm guessing is maybe 10% of the property value here. This is the most sought after property in the world, despite it being on some of the biggest seismic and clearly wildfire fault lines in the world. $50 million, $17 million, $3 million, that's a crack house. $37 million, $785, that's a keeper. Hey, what is that one for $795,000? I want to see that. I mean, I know it's not there anymore, but bright spa-like ensuite bathroom, 800 square feet. That's all you need. You're at the beach. You're never going to be home anyways. $6 million. Now, they're saying that insurance companies bailed a few months ago. The insurance companies are claiming that it's because it was just not economically viable to do business. The risk was too high and the premiums were too high, so they couldn't do business there. And the people are saying, this is all a scam, and now we're, at least you still own the deed to the land, so you can still rebuild. But yeah, it's gonna suck. But I mean, if it could happen, look, this might not be received the right way, but if it's gonna happen to somebody, at least it happens to rich people, because they can actually rebuild, okay? Now, this is not only going to, hopefully, we don't want it to happen to anybody, okay? Maybe that came out the wrong way, but what I'm saying is, the one silver lining here is most of these people have enough money in their bank accounts to rebuild, all right? Now, like me, who's been predicting for years, I made a video called Brace for Apocalyptic Wildfires. You guys know every year, I do 3 or 4 of these videos warning people that the big one is coming. And the thing is, this isn't even the big one. This isn't the big one. The big wildfire is going to rip through the boreal forest up here in Canada. And that thing is just going to not stop burning. It almost happened if it were not for a bit of a wetter season last year. The fires that were burning under the snow, those would have turned into new massive fires, and last year would have been the biggest wildfire season, which would have probably even been bigger than the one that preceded it, that blew away the past record by 300%. Now, we still got a lot of stuff to burn up here, okay? Not even a percentage point of it has been burned. So the wildfires of the future are going to be something else. And I can tell you, every year for the last 10 years, we've had wildfire smoke. That is not normal. Never as a kid do I remember it. But now it's basically not just a yearly experience. Usually it's the better part of summer. Here's what Rogan had to say about this. Apparently he talked to a firefighter, and man, this is probably one of Rogan's most, I know it wasn't his prediction, it was the firefighter's prediction, but this is a very timely delivery here. Let's hear what he has to say.
I talked to a fireman once. This is one of the reasons it freaked me out. And he was telling me, he goes, dude, one day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire's going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean. And there's not a fucking thing we can do about it. I go, really? He goes, yeah, we just get lucky. He goes, we get lucky with the wind. He goes, but if the wind hits the wrong way, it's just going to burn straight through LA and there's not going to be a thing we can do about it.
And this is the thing, one of the criticisms levied by Trump and his musketeers against Gavin Newsom that we all have our criticisms of, but I don't think it's in good taste to be doing something like this during a crisis. But one of the criticisms is the fire hydrants. And what this firefighter is telling Joe Rogan, it's like, it doesn't matter. When these fires are moving as fast as they are and the wind is so strong that you can't even put planes up in the air, it doesn't matter if you have fire hydrants that have water in them or not. Now, that's not to say that they're not useful right now, but a lot of this is outside of the control of firefighters. It's just not something you can control on a scale like that. There's just not enough manpower.
Because these fires are so big, dude. When they're talking about like thousands of acres that are burning simultaneously with like 40-mile-an-hour winds. And the wind's just blowing embers through the air, and those embers are landing on roofs, and those houses are going up, and they're landing on bushes, and those bushes are going up, and everything's dry. And once it happens in a way where it's so spread out that there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do.
You just have to evacuate, right?
Nothing they can do.
I mean, talk about a prediction, man. Wow. I think that was one of Joe Rogan's finest moments there. This is a $35 million home up in flames. Again, it's $5 million worth of home, $30 million worth of land. So they'll be all right. Sunset Boulevard, another iconic scene that epitomizes America up in flames. This is it. It's like a scene out of the Terminator. Sarah Connor gets fried in LA. It's, I mean, we're what, 9 days into 2025 here? Think by the end of the year, people are going to forget that LA burned down because so much else is going to have happened by then. Isn't that crazy? Unfortunately, I'm quite used to seeing things like this. I mean, Jasper just burned down. Which is our most iconic town. But this is something else. I mean, this is just wild, man. Wow. And this doesn't even do it justice because this is older footage from like a day ago. The situation now is probably much worse. Could you imagine a nuclear event? A nuclear event would be much worse than this. Much, much worse, because there'd be a lot more panic. Everybody would be fleeing the region. Emergency services wouldn't be able to do anything because they're not equipped to deal with radioactive fallout, most of them. And if they do, they have a very small contingent that's trained in that sort of thing. The looting that's going to ensue. Just the cutthroat nature of it all, people lost and confused, uncritical people like that lady, up against very opportunistic criminals. And this is what Trump had to say to Gavin Newsom, as he calls him. Should immediately go to Northern California and open up the water main and let the water flow into this dry, starving, burning state instead of having to go out into the Pacific Ocean. It ought to be done right now. No more excuses from this incompetent government. It's far too late. Now, I don't know what the reasons are. I'm sure that it's not that simple. I'm sure that there's some kind of reason, and if there isn't, then this is clearly something that needs to be addressed. But I think the politicization of such an issue, especially as it's so ironic that right now it's Canadian bombers that are there helping Californians, even after we were told that we're just a burden on the United States, for him to demonstrate such impropriety in how he's dealing with this crisis. I mean, if anything, one of the first tweets he should have made was, even though it's a platitude, condolences, right? Condolences and something solution focused. Giving people the confidence that when you get into office, which is like 10 days from now, he's basically already the president, we're going to do everything that we can, okay? That's what he should be saying right now. And save this politicizing for later. Now, the only possible rationale I could see for something like this is maybe this puts some fire under Gavin Newsom's ass, because he's going to think, okay, now the pressure's on. I really have to show my constituents that I'm doing everything I possibly can in this situation. But for Trump and Elon and the entire Musketeer Brigade, that's what I just call them now, all the people who ride Elon's nuts so that they can get more traction in the algorithm on Twitter, it's actually very pathetic, and it's a real thing, okay? I don't play that game. But, you know, right now it just appears as though there's way too, it's like grade school level trolling happening when the focus should be on how can we help people. I mean, what do you think is going to happen when the shit really hits the fan? And if there's a political disagreement between the president and every single governor, now I understand that you could have a president who demonstrates all the political niceties and then does nothing at the same time. That's not good either, okay? I guess you could make the argument that at least with Trump, he's the president that's honest. Yeah, we're probably not going to do fuck all, right? But I think that a different approach and a more sensitive approach is in order, considering that the potential for more of the city to burn down is still there, all right? And yeah, there indeed looks like there could be a lot of arson involved here as well, which is not to say that arson would work without the optimal conditions for such a thing. So it's a crazy situation. Then you have, Elon is just losing it, man. I really miss the old Elon where he'd talk about science, he'd warn us about AI. You know, he was one of us, it seemed. And that's how you know he was a made man. And I think he is now in the grip of a real radical form of Ayn Rand objectivism, where, I can appreciate objectivism. Basically, it's like kind of a selfish philosophy. It's kind of like manifest destiny, altruism is evil type thing. But it's just getting to the point where, okay, we all hate Justin Trudeau, right? Here's what Justin Trudeau says. There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada will become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both of our countries benefit from being such other trading partner, blah, blah, blah. And Elon Musk, just, completely unprompted. What leader wouldn't say that, right? Girl, you're not the governor of Canada anymore, so it doesn't matter what you say. Like, it's just something so juvenile, especially, and I don't like Justin Trudeau at all. You guys know that. But this is just, there's no decorum. This is a guy who's supposed to be overseeing the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, right? Which is like the equivalent of the government fart button at this point, because it's going to be managed by a bunch of people who don't have the same restrictions in terms of their private investing, and they're going to be able to potentially put themselves in a very disadvantageous or advantageous position compared to everybody else. Anyways, not that the Doge is necessarily going to have any power, but this whole thing is just, it's devolving by the day. I can't imagine what it's going to be like. Like, somebody's got to rein this guy in, because Could you ever imagine Putin or Xi Jinping, like these professional leaders? Could you ever imagine how they view this sort of interaction? How they must view it. This Jerry Springer, like we've literally become Jerry Springer in the upper echelons, in government. It's become Jerry Springer. It started off as like entertainment, and then it kind of became real life in the streets of New York. And now this is how our politicians talk to one another. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy. Okay, people are concerned that America has legitimized the redrawing of the world map. Russia's pro-invasion bloggers have spent years defending a brutal war in Ukraine, and now they're actually kind of happy that Donald Trump is trying to seize Greenland. However, because, of course, what this is going to do, it's going to be like a big game of Risk. Big global game of Risk. If you ever played the game of Risk, you know the objective is to try to expand your empire, expand your territory in preparation. And we're in the beginning phase right now where, you know, you get all your pieces and you get to pick what you want on the map before the big battle starts. That's where we're at. And so if Trump wants to start annexing territory, that's just going to give more legitimacy. Nobody is ever then going to be able to, with a straight face, question China going into Taiwan. It's just, you know, good luck with that. 4 Norwegian F-35 fighter jets have been deployed to Poland to defend the logistics center at Rizal Airfield in Poland. Strange. I guess the question is why? Are they worried about the Belarusians? We know they're not really worried about Russia attacking Poland, right? Right? Who knows? Who knows what's really going on? They could be getting ready to attack Belarus, and this is what Belarus has been saying for the longest time. They, in fact, could be getting ready to attack Kaliningrad. All of this talk right now, Trump is saying that he is going to meet with Vladimir Putin. Okay, he wants to meet, and we will arrange it. Donald Trump said that the format of the meeting with Putin has yet to be determined. Look, I've told you guys, they're going to meet. They are 100% going to meet. They're going to meet in the same way that Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin met in 2021. And what happened around that time? Well, that's right about the time that Biden said we got to pack up in Afghanistan because we got a war coming in Ukraine in a few months. Because right after you meet with the leader, so long as there's the prospect of a meeting, there's kind of like a possibility that maybe we can come to peaceful terms, even if it's just the faintest chance. If you have that as a possibility, so long as you postpone it, then it's almost preventative in some respects. But the moment you have a meeting with the leader and you aren't able to strike a deal, that's the end. That means the only next step is war, right? And that is exactly what happened with Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump, is that after he went there for the big publicity stunt, the brouhaha, the same thing is going to happen with Vladimir Putin. But I guarantee you, you are going to see strategic escalation, the likes of which we never seen in the last 3 years. The Russians are saying that they think the Americans are going to be building a base in Greenland to deploy nuclear bombers. I don't have my maps up today, but Greenland is very close to Russia, in a sense. Still far away, but much closer. And so if you put those bombers there, that is not necessarily a game changer, but if you are slowly trying to position yourself for a decapitation strike, you're already all over the Middle East. You've already kicked the Russians out of Syria and their S-400s and their radars. You kick that out. If you potentially move into Iran, then you're on their southern flank. Azerbaijan, Armenia, that's a possibility as well at some point. And you're developing NATO, you're enveloping Russia. And the goal then would be to do a decapitation strike using a combination of fighter jets and intermediate range missiles. Of course, Donald Trump, 2019, backed out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which arguably is what set the underpinnings, the groundwork for this current conflict with Ukraine. Obviously, it goes back further than that, but that was one of another needle in the haystack type thing. or not another straw that broke the camel's back. It's getting late in the video here. I'm mixing metaphors. Okay, so what was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about yes. Okay, so let me just leave it on here. Now, the northern base. Russia is the only non-NATO Arctic state, and the melting ice means it increasingly views its Arctic border as a vulnerability. That is why it's reopened more than 50 mothballed Soviet-era military outposts there. 50, all right? And so you can see that the United States is rightfully threatened by that. But they're not telling us that. But Drone has a Trump bombshell that he's going to share with us in just a moment. Soviet-era military posts there, as well as upgraded radar systems and a modernized northern fleet. In such an environment, an attempt by the U.S. to acquire more Arctic territory, even if it were just from another NATO member and not infringing on Russia's territory, would be seen as a provocation. One Russian lawmaker has raised fears that Greenland will become home to U.S. strategic bombers. And that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with Project Iceworm 2.0, another massive military base and possibly a retreat for the elites. Now, something weird is going on in Iran. They've been sending out these weird cryptic messages. Their state media. Press TV has said 9 hours, I probably cut this about 3 or 4 hours ago, so it's probably about 13, 14 hours old now. Something big is coming. Can you guess what it is? And then it has looking at Turkey. But the eyes are not looking at Turkey. So I don't know what this means. Could it mean something in Syria? Is there going to be some sort of uprising against the Turkish Syrian forces? It's possible, or Iran is planning something else. Because Iran is getting ready to confront F-35s. This is the commander of their air defense forces, saying that they now have a solution to take down F-35s and F-22s. Very bold statement. Will that pertain to B-2 bombers as well, is the question, because those are the ones that can carry the ordnance capable of, if there ever is going to be a bunker buster that is a threat to Iran, it's got to come off a stealth bomber. Now, it could be a tactical nuke, and I don't know the physics of putting a tactical nuke on a bunker buster, how much more damage it does than a conventional warhead. We can presume a lot, but how much is the question. The prime target is going to be the Natanz nuclear facility, not the 150-odd underground missile cities that Iran has all throughout the country. That would probably be a feat too big for the United States and Israel to accomplish, because a lot of these are buried way deeper than the Natanz facility, which is 150 feet deep plus 7 feet of concrete. You put those two things together, that's kind of right at the limit of what the best bunker buster can accomplish under ideal conditions, presuming you can get that bird over Iran without them knowing about it, which many people think they can, but then you have to put several down in one place, and that presumes that Iran does not have redundant systems throughout. We are going to see a war with Iran. Okay, I regret to tell you, I've warned you about the pandemic years before it happened, and I know it was rather anticlimactic. I warned you about pretty much every other catastrophe that's ensued thus far, the fires included, and I'm warning you that there's going to be a big war with Iran very soon. Okay? It's coming, and it's coming very soon. So just prepare for it. There were rumors that Iran started a nuclear test or conducted a nuclear test because there was a 4.3 magnitude earthquake detected near Tabriz, which has sparked speculation. I believe Tabriz is a region where they have some of their rocket forces located, okay? Now, this is from the Sri Lankan Times, which I believe is a very sort of pro-Israeli media outlet, so I would not put too much stock in this. They're saying that it had the right depth, because that's what you always have to look at. Is it at the right depth? Typically, these things happen too low to even qualify to be considered a nuclear test. But in Iran, they have so much seismic activity. It's one of the most seismic places in the world. So the default point of view is that this is likely just an earthquake, and this is probably just propaganda to try to hype up the fact that Iran has nuclear weapons to give credence to the need to go in there and do something about it. If Iran does demonstrate nuclear capability, you can bet that they're going to have several. Now, we're just days away from Russia signing the nuclear deal with Iran. Not the nuclear deal, but the strategic deal with Iran. I thought I heard Normalcy Norman there for a second. I was going to get on the end of the shotgun there. That's how vigilant I am, guys, okay? But what was I talking about before I went all old man? Old man on you. Yeah, so strategic partnership with Russia will be signed on January 17th. And after that, I guess we're going to find out what's going on and what time it is. Trump has said that if the hostages aren't back by the time he's in office, he's going to, insert bluster here, and we'll see what happens, right? I found this kind of funny. This is No Guns in Canada. They have so many followers, don't they? Look at that, 3,000 whole followers. No Guns in Canada. Well, what do they think of Trump's plan to take over Canada? They say, I'd sooner take up arms and die fighting for Canada than become a part of the United States. I'm friggin' serious. Interesting. So you only want to give back the guns when it's in your interest, right? When you want us to die for your cause. But you do agree that there is some prospect of tyranny. You just don't think that it could emerge from our own government. Here's the good old boys club, having a good laugh today. As much as I realize that this is indicative that the establishment has deep roots, and if you think that Trump isn't part of the establishment, then oh, that's funny. That's so funny. That's so funny. Guys, you do not get to the top without an army. Remember that. You don't get to the top without an army. I used to think Elon Musk was cool. And then I realized that he was scared because he doesn't have an army. And there's gangsters making sure that they don't take him out. You need protection. That's the name of the game. It's just the game. And Obama, Trump, at the end of the day, they're in the same club. They bow down to the same masters. Okay? And that's just the way it is, man. Just the way it is. Nothing ain't gonna change. The only thing you can change is yourself. Now, perhaps the most interesting part of the video I saved for last. Get a load of this.
A story that kind of disappeared very suddenly. Do you have any idea whatever happened to the drones?
What happened to drones?
Well, you said that you thought the government knew what was happening with these drones over New Jersey. There were some by Bedminster.
I don't know. They're over Bedminster a lot, so I can imagine. I'm going to give you a report on drones about one day into...
When they say drones, it's such a huge spectrum. Like, there's personal drones. There's people putting DJIs up in the air that are being reported, like false positives. The drones that they're talking about are the big ones that are the size of cars flying around. Let's just get that straight, okay? For the most part.
Because I think
with
it's
ridiculous
that they're not telling you about what's going on with the drones. And it's not only with me. Glenn was telling me today that in Virginia they have drones all over the place too, and nobody's reporting it. I don't know why they're not. Do you want to say something about that?
Just one quick comment, which is...
They seem way too eager to... I see what they're going to do here. They're going to likely chalk this up to foreign interference, foreign spying. It's going to be something like that, and it's going to be that there's sleeper cells throughout the United States, which I don't doubt. But the reality is that does not explain a lot of things, because they could easily come out and say that, and the American people would accept that as an explanation. Perhaps that is why Donald Trump is saying he's confused as to why they're not telling the population, but let's carry on.
We are home to largest naval base in the world in Quantico, and we house a lot of the SEAL teams and have a huge national security infrastructure. And now for 2 years running, we have had drone incursion over secure airspace, and we still don't know why.
And I guess that maps on perfectly to the beginning of the balloon, sightings over, or the balloons from China, okay? So I imagine that this is going to be used to justify some sort of new military initiative or potential crackdown on drones or something like that. There's going to be some new regulation put into place. Or maybe Trump's going to actually tell us the truth. Let's skip ahead a little bit.
To mitigate these drones. Attack in New Orleans, we had drones being flown over our nuclear reactors in Louisiana. And we brought that attention to the FAA. We've been asking the FAA to give these states the ability to mitigate these drones. And it's sitting on some bureaucrats.
Like, drones are already 3 stories ago. Like, in that time, we had the Cybertruck stuff, the New Year stuff, and we're already on fire stuff. I mean, it's crazy how time is going.
Desk. And that's real.
Nobody knows. They don't want to talk about it. Go ahead, Governor, you going to say?
I was just going to say we have drones in Wyoming flying over what it is.
That could be us sending drones. I hope that's the case. Us doing it and doing research, and maybe they don't want to talk about it from...
So it sounds like he doesn't know what it is. And I have a sneaking suspicion that once he finds out, he's going to make something up because he knows that he can't tell the population the truth, which is that they're looking for nuclear weapons.
From that standpoint, I hope it's not an enemy, but we're going to find out on the 21st, the day after. You have to give me a little time for the inauguration, but shortly thereafter, we'll give you a report on it. We'll tell you exactly what it is. They know, and it's very strange that they aren't talking about it.
Well, it's probably not very strange. There's probably some national security related reason why they're not doing it. I doubt they would just not do it because, despite all the speculation, maybe now that the story's died down, they hope it's going to go away, but he basically just resurrected it. Before I leave you guys, I want to advise you, go get a fire mask. Okay, I'm going to just quickly show you how it works. This is going to basically neutralize carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide by adding an additional molecule to it. This is just a training unit. And what it's going to do, it's not only going to filter out the smoke and particulate matter, but it's also going to make the air breathable. You can use a gas mask filter. Any gas mask filter is going to filter out smoke particles, okay? But not all of them are going to be able to filter out carbon monoxide. You need a specific type of filter that does that. This will do everything. This is, basically the full meal deal. It takes care of all kinds of chemicals. It takes care of carbon monoxide. It takes care of, any sort of radioactive agent, any sort of riot control agents, smoke, you name it. This is going to deal with it. Biological pathogens as well. Now, this is a very simple, disposable thing that's relatively cheap. And everybody should have one of these wherever you stay. So if it's in your office, if you work in a high-rise building, there's no reason not to have something like this, or to even recommend that your floor get something like this, especially if you work in a place that's a prime target. Put it in your car, put it somewhere, especially if you live in LA, okay? Because when you're trying to get out of a place, smoke inhalation could potentially kill you, or it could just disorient you to the point where you're not able to escape. Anyways, how it works is very simple. Again, this is just a training unit, and I've kind of stretched it out over the years. It's as simple as that. It's basically one size fits all. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be enough to get you out of a bad situation. And it has the heat reflector here, so it's going to kind of keep the heat off you a little bit. Again, it's a disposable unit. 50 bucks, and you're good to go. Pick one up at CanadianPreparedness.com if you want to support the channel. Let's see where we're at tomorrow, my friends. Keep on prepping.